There we go. And once again, I'd like to welcome everyone to the Los Angeles Birders webinar for tonight. Tonight's going to be an exciting webinar. But before we get there, I just want to ask if you're an Los Angeles Birders Los Angeles Birders member. And if you are, thank you very, very much. We could not do it without you, nor would we want to do it without you. If you're not a member, please consider joining Los Angeles Birders. The membership dues are minimal, and your dues will help support things like this webinar, keeping the recordings of our webinars on our website. It helps support local field ornithology and community science projects. And we have lots of great stuff coming up, and we have a lot of bills we have to meet, as any other organization does. So if you are a member, thank you for your support. If you're not a member, please consider joining. Just go to our website and click on the support or join button. And Susan, I think it's up to you.
Okay, thank you, Ron. Well, Los Angeles Birders is very pleased to have Bernardo Alps with us tonight. Many of you already know Bernardo, but you may not know is that Bernardo majored in journalism at the University of Sao Paulo, Brazil, and today works as a lecturer and expedition guide on cruises all over the world. He also works as a marine mammal observer and birder on research cruises and is a protected species observer on seismic surveys. He's also an adjunct research scientist at the Cabrillo Aquarium, where he conducts systematic bird surveys at Cabrillo Beach, advises the aquarium staff on matters pertaining to birds and marine mammals, and has developed a training manual in marine mammal and sea turtle avoidance for oil company maritime crews. Bernardo is a member of the West Coast Large Whale Entanglement Team and has been involved with conservation work for many years. Bernardo has conducted seasonal seabird breeding and roosting transect surveys and seabird and marine mammal foraging surveys for Point Reyes Bird Observatory. Bernardo is also fluent in German, Portuguese, French, and Spanish. So without further ado, please welcome Bernardo Alps.
There you go.
All right. Susan, thank you for that amazing introduction. And thank you all for being here, and a huge thank you to Los Angeles Birders for having me. I think that Los Angeles Birders is a terrific organization. I am very happy to be a member, and I am really excited about all the work that you guys are doing. So tonight we'll talk about marine mammals, and as you know, when we're out on the water, if we're looking for birds, for example, or if we're fishing, or if we're whale watching, we end up in the same spots. There are hot spots out in the ocean where things tend to happen. So it's difficult to avoid mammals and fish and other stuff if you're looking for birds. And I have my work cut out for this presentation with you guys as an audience, because as birders, you understand a lot of the things that I have to often explain at great lengths to other audiences. You understand how taxonomy works, that there are constant changes in taxonomy. You understand how field guides work, that field guide is not a matching game, but it's a guide to help you on the journey of identifying a species. And you know how much individual variation there can be. So a lot of things are similar for birds and for marine mammals. I just want to mention really quickly that this presentation is based on the training that I put together for Chevron shipping. The California Lands Commission made them train all their shipping crews in marine mammal and sea turtle avoidance. You know, they have the El Segundo terminal in the Santa Monica Bay. And so I prepared a training manual for them and also a training. And here are the acknowledgements, because I am showing a lot of other people's work here. So let's jump right in. What are marine mammals? We have a pretty good idea what mammals are, and several of them kind of returned to the sea. Whales, dolphins, and porpoises, the cetaceans, kind of returned to the ocean around 45 million years ago, and they have completely severed their ties to the land. But basically, the definition of a marine mammal is an animal that is a mammal that relies on the ocean as its habitat, a place where it makes a living, where it feeds, it avoids predators, and so on. And we did talk about taxonomy. Marine mammal taxonomy is in flux, exactly as bird taxonomy is. With birds, I tend to follow Clemens, basically because that's what eBird does. So it's really easy if you look up your eBird app. If something is a species there, you know it. If not, they're being conservative. But and for marine mammals, the place to go is the Society for Marine Mammalogy. It's a professional organization, and they have a taxonomic list, the list of marine mammal species and subspecies. It is very carefully put together, and it is constantly updated. So there isn't a regular update as Clemens comes out every August. This is kind of done as things warrant, but it is the place to look things up. And additionally, there is a lot of disinformation, a lot of outdated facts, a lot of just erroneous facts out there about marine mammals, more so than about birds. If you go on a pelagic birding trip, your leaders are going to know their birds, and if they provide shaky information, somebody will call them on it. But marine mammal watching trips, whale watching trips around the world are mostly catering to the general public, not to experts like birders. So a lot of stuff sneaks in that is not quite accurate. And additionally, it seems that everybody, or quite a few people, seem to think that they should write a book or create a website or something about marine mammals, and there is a lot of stuff there that's just not up to par. So you do have to be careful where you find your information. The Society for Marine Mammalogy website on the previous slide is a very good place to start. And they're working on doing species accounts. They only have a handful so far, but those species accounts, they're kind of like birds of the world. They have really all kinds of good information. NOAA is another really good resource to find out about marine mammals. So the area that we're going to look at is the Southern California Bight, the ocean right outside of our door here. And that's an area that, for one, has a lot of uses. It is it's located on a very, very busy watershed. We have all of Los Angeles, Orange, San Diego, and Ventura counties with all their inhabitants, all the stuff that goes on shore. The largest seaport complex in the United States is located here. There's a tremendous military presence. There is a lot of recreational activities like boating, sailing, fishing, sport fishing. There's a lot of commercial fishing. So there's a lot of human activity in the Southern California Bight. And so here is this Southern California Bight. It's this football-shaped area. You see Point Conception on the top there, and it kind of bulges out a little bit, and it kind of rejoins the continent around Point Colonet in Baja California. Often we refer to as the Southern California Bight ending at the border, but that's more when there are population estimates, for example, that are just relevant to the US, so that there's a political element involved. Biologically, the Southern California Bight reaches well into Mexico, and it is defined by the cold California current that comes down the coast on the left out of the Gulf of Alaska, brings cold nutrient-rich water down. And there's the Davidson countercurrent that moves inside along the shore from Central America, bringing warm water. So there's all kinds of mixing of different water temperatures happening in the Southern California Bight. It varies by season, it varies from year to year, but you really find every species will find kind of what it needs. You look at the bathymetry, how many different water depths there are. There are all these different islands. So this is a very, very rich environment. We know how many birds we can find here, and about a third of all marine mammal species have been recorded in this area. This is a little map more zoomed in that looks specifically at how the bathymetry affects the species distribution. So we have the San Pedro escarpment running along the Palos Verdes Peninsula here. We have this hook, which is right around the Whiskey Buoy outside of Angel's Gate. So these are areas of great upwelling. The prevailing current comes out of the west-northwest and pushes nutrient-rich water to the surface. We also have the Redondo Canyon, which brings fairly deep water very, very close to shore, and also creates quite a bit of upwelling. And then we have pretty deep water in the San Pedro Channel. And San Pedro Channel is the correct name. It's often referred to as the Catalina Channel, but the official name is San Pedro Channel. And I think so here are the areas of upwelling that create a lot of nutrient production at the surface. So this is the area where we're most likely to see dolphins. And these are the migratory routes of the Pacific gray whale. Gray whales tend to migrate close to shore, but Many animals also travel further offshore. Basically, the ones that are going around Catalina Island in this slide are cutting straight across from Point Conception to and are rejoining the coast further down. So here's everything superimposed. Let's take a look at some of the species that we can find here. Starting with the smallest of all marine mammals. This is the sea otter. It is its range, its original range goes from about central Baja California around the Pacific Rim all the way to Japan. This is an animal that has been hunted extensively. A lot of the politics and of the exploration of much of what's now Alaska, British Columbia, and Eastern Russia was based on the hunt of this particular animal. And sea otters have the populations have rebounded in some areas, but not everywhere. The southern sea otter, which is a subspecies that occurs in California, was thought to be extinct. There was a small population that kind of survived along the Big Sur coast, and that population has slowly recovered. The sea otters rely on their metabolism as much as on their luxurious fur to thermoregulate in the water, and that creates a lot of conflict with humans. Fishermen are just very, very afraid of these critters eating all their catch. But from a biological standpoint, we know that they are ecosystem engineers. Where sea otters have healthy populations, the underwater environment is healthy, but we tend to kind of look at resources. So while they're protected, of course, they're protected throughout their entire range, and they're certainly protected in the US under the Endangered Species Act and under the Marine Mammal Protection Act. But there's a weird management agreement in California where a small population was taken to San Nicolas Island with hopes of establishing a second population. But that same agreement requires the California Fish and Wildlife Department to remove sea otters from any place south of Point Conception and move them back up to their range. Obviously, the sea otters didn't vote for this this agreement, and they certainly don't abide by it. So they continue to disregard the boundaries that we try to put on their distribution. They have not really moved south of Point Conception very much. Every spring we see a few dozen of these animals along the Gaviota coast, and they do move further south. I've seen them at Cabrillo Beach, along the Palos Verdes Peninsula in the Santa Monica Bay. There are reports from San Diego Bay. So occasional animals do come down, but they certainly have not reoccupied their original range. And yeah, some will say that the sea otter is the cutest of all marine mammals, but they're definitely among the feistier ones, and they can be pretty mean. So to introduce the pinnipeds, the seals, we'll take a look at this slide. So this is the current taxonomy. Under the order Carnivora, we have three families. The ursids are represented in marine mammals are represented by a polar bear. No danger of seeing one of those in Southern California. The mustelids, the weasels are represented by the sea otter. And then we have the pinnipeds. You will still find a lot of literature talking about an order, Pinnipedia, which has really not been accepted for going on 30 years now. So the pinnipeds are three families under carnivora. The walrus, again, there's not much danger of running into a living walrus in Southern California. There are actually quite a few walrus species in the fossil record in our area. But the other two families are represented here: the otariids, or eared seals, which are the sea lions and fur seals, and the phocids, or the true seals. And here we'll take a look. These are all the species. There's the walrus on the center right. Everything from the center line up are the true seals, and the two rows on the bottom are the eared seals, fur seals on the bottom, and then the sea lions above. And so we'll take a look. We have 6 representatives in our area. Two are sea lions, 2 are fur seals, and 2 are true seals. The California sea lion is the most widespread, the most easily seen, the most social of all these. We do see these guys along the shore all the time. Eared seals, as the name implies, have external ear flaps. Both eared seals and true seals actually have the ear structures internally, but only the eared seals have those external pinnae, like this California sea lion shows on the side of its head here. They swim very differently. Sea lions will use their front flippers in an up and down motion. They fly underwater like a bird, whereas true seals use their hind flippers. They stretch them out and they move them side to side, so they swim underwater like a fish. So here's one of the parts that the California sea lions play in the ecosystem. This is a young killer whale that was still learning how to hunt. The rest of the pod kind of beat up this sea lion a little bit and then let the little one at it. And the main reason why I'm putting this slide in is this was literally a mile and a half off Point Vicente. Most of the pictures that I'm showing tonight are local photos. I have a few that are not, basically because they better illustrate what I'm trying to say, but we do see a lot of interesting stuff very easily in our area. So, as I said, sea lions are the most visible. They have become a tourist attraction. This is Pier 39 in San Francisco, where the city fathers kind of embraced these guys. They removed all boats from these docks, and they created basically a wild exhibit, a place where people come from all over the world to see sea lions. We had a similar thing happening in Marina del Rey. If you've been to Burton Chase Park, kind of earlier this year, you might have seen a lot of sea lions hauled out on the dock very close, but apparently that was not very welcome, because I don't see them there anymore. And again, sea lions are a species that is just not bothered by humans. On the contrary, they're very intelligent, very inquisitive, and they take advantage of all human built structures in the ocean, all human activities. They think that all the navigation buoys and boats that we put in the water are for their amusement. This is a pier up in Moss Landing. And of course, this familiarity with human activities brings them in conflict with humans quite a bit. We often see sea lions that are entangled in fishing gear. This is one way that we often see them out on the boat. They will spend time at the surface thermoregulating, sticking their flippers up in the air to catch the sun rays. And they are very interactive, not just with humans, but also with other marine mammals. And being eared seals, they have longer front flippers than the true seals, and they're able to rotate their hind flippers under their bodies, which allows them to kind of walk on all fours, not very well, but effectively so. And so they're able to climb up on rocky shores quite a bit, whereas true seals do need a fairly flat, gently sloping surface to inch along on their bellies like a caterpillar. So the other sea lion species that we have here is the stellar sea lion, which is the largest of all the sea lion species, and we're right at the southern edge of its distribution. They have bred on San Miguel Island, but they are not common in the Southern California Bight. We do see them occasionally. About 10 years or so, we started seeing them a little bit more regular, but now they have retreated again, so we do not see these guys every day. They are paler than California sea lions overall, although there's tremendous variation, and all pinnipeds look paler when they're dry. This is a young stellar sea lion in the Santa Monica Bay. It is probably between a year and 2 years old, but it is already the size of a medium to large California sea lion. And you see it has a very different head shape. To me, stellar sea lions look like a bear. And this guy is probably a hybrid. It definitely is as pale as we expect from a stellar sea lion, and it does not have a typical California sea lion face, but it also does not have a typical stellar sea lion face. So now we jump to the true seals, also called earlet seals. The harbor seal is kind of, it is fairly common in our area, but it is fairly inconspicuous. It is not a seal that you necessarily notice unless you're paying attention. If you walk along the seashore anywhere in California, you might look over to the water and there's a harbor seal watching you, kind of following your movements. They do haul out on rocks near shore, and there is a haul out in the Los Angeles harbor, part of LA. The whale watching boats will stop there. It's right at the corner of Pier 400. You can also see them along the rocks at the harbor, the channel entrance in Marina del Rey. So they come in many different color morphs, and they are really circumpolar in the northern hemisphere. They range from mid-Baja California all the way to Japan, and we do get get to see them if we look for them. This is from the port of LA at Pier 400, the haul out. And they're more coastal, even though they will swim out to the Channel Islands. Every now and then we do see a harbor seal further offshore, but we tend to see them mostly right along the coast. Another true seal is the northern elephant seal, which is an animal of superlatives. It is the second largest of all pinnipeds, and it is an incredibly deep diver. These guys can stay down for around an hour and dive about a mile deep. They have incredible sexual dimorphism, with the males having the namesake proboscis, this nose that gives them the name elephant seal. And they are known for their fights. Males establish territories on the beaches to have females come and pop on their territory, and then they will mate with the females before they return to the ocean. And if you have never been to Central California, to Point Piedras Blancas, near Hearst Castle, I would recommend that as one of the true great wildlife spectacles that is really comparable to anything that you can see anywhere on Earth. These seals have come back from the brink of extinction, and their population has rebounded nicely, and they're taking over these beaches. Coastal beaches were probably not really their preferred habitat historically, at a time when bears and wolves roamed California, but now they certainly have established residency here. You see the males fighting for dominance. You can see females giving birth. You see all these interactions. It's an absolutely spectacular sight to see. And this is how we usually see them at sea. We do encounter them on pelagic birding trips, and they will stick their head out of the water in this behavior called bottling. True seals do that, where they're upright in the water, and with the head protruding. They're usually taking a quick break. They might be taking a quick nap before they go down on another deep dive. So now we're back to the eared seals. There are two species of fur seals. The northern fur seal, again, they arc all the way around the North Pacific. We are at the very far southern end of their range. They do have a rookery on San Miguel Island, and they do feed in the California Current. This is a northern fur seal in the water. They have much longer hind flippers than the sea lions do. So if you're trying to tell a fur seal apart from a sea lion, if you do see the hind flippers, if you see them being this long, you're probably looking at a fur seal. They also have a behavior called telescoping, where they lift their head very high out of the water, which sea lions don't necessarily do. And to tell a northern fur seal from a Guadalupe fur seal, you look for the tiny head. To me, the head of a northern fur seal reminds me of a pine cone. It is kind of small and oval shaped. The Guadalupe fur seal were just in the northern part of its range. They breed on Guadalupe Island, also on the Benito Islands in central Baja, and they range up to about British Columbia. They have historically bred on San Miguel Island, and we are seeing animals there again, so they might breed there soon. Their head shape is a little bit more like a dachshund. It's a little bit longer than in a northern fur seal. And here's a behavior that is diagnostic for fur seals for both species. This is a behavior called jug handling, where they stick one front flipper between the two hind flippers, kind of creating this jug handle when they thermoregulate at the surface of the water. Now, let's move on to the whales. So any literature, any website, any place where you find anything written about whales, we'll talk about order Cetacea, although on the Society for Marine Mammalogy website, there's agreement that the cetaceans should be placed in an order called Cetoartiodactyla, which lumps them with the even-toed ungulates like cows, camels, deer, animals like that. So that is something that's pretty much agreed upon at this point, of course, but they have not really figured out what comes below that. Is Cetacea a suborder or something else? But there is no more order Cetacea. So basically, the cetaceans, the whales, dolphins, and porpoises are divided into two groups. Formerly, they were suborders. Again, we don't know what they are. And those are the mysticetes or baleen whales and the odontocetes or toothed whales. The toothed whales are mainly all the dolphins and all the beaked whales, about which we have to talk a little bit more. And there are a couple of other outliers. There's the sperm whale, and the baleen whales are a whole group of whales that have given up their teeth. Instead of teeth, they have plates in their mouth made out of a protein called keratin, which is the same as our fingernails, our hair, birds' beaks, horses' hoof. It's a very versatile material, and it creates an effective sieve that allows them to filter small organisms out of seawater. So they have evolved to take in huge mouthfuls of water containing huge quantities of schooling organisms like small fish or krill or squid. And this is really one of the keys that allowed these animals to grow to such gigantic sizes, that they are very, very effective at consuming a lot of prey. So here's a quick look at the species. There are 90 species or so. Again, taxonomists are constantly going back and forth. There's splitting and lumping. The ones on the left facing right are the baleen whales, and you can see that overall they are the larger species. And on the right facing left are the toothed whales, with the kind of the bottom third being all the beaked whales. And let's take a look at specific species here. So the only porpoise in our area is the dulse porpoise. The porpoises are the smallest cetaceans, although there are some fairly small dolphins, but as a family, these guys are the smallest. Porpoise means pigfish. They're all kind of a little bit rotund like this. And again, we're at the far southern end of the dulse porpoise. range. They're more of a cold water species, and they tend to move very fast. Often what we see when we spot them out there is a rooster tail. It's the water being kicked up when they swim very, very fast. There's a second porpoise species, the harbor porpoise, kind of nearby. They have been sighted in the Southern California Bight, but kind of less than once every 10 years. Their range really starts at Point Conception, and they become fairly common fairly fast. They are very common now under the Golden Gate Bridge, but we don't see them in Southern California. Now let's talk about the common dolphins. Again, the taxonomy is in flux here. So up until a few years ago, we considered the short-beaked common dolphin and the long-beaked common dolphin separate species. They were split in 1994. The work was done by John Haining of our very own Natural History Museum of LA County, together with Bill Perrin from the Smithsonian. But further examination has revealed that the way the taxonomy stood is not accurate anymore. So what has happened is all common dolphins have been lumped back into a single species. So now technically there's only one species of common dolphin, Delphinus delphis, but we know that for example, in Southern California, we have what are clearly two different forms of common dolphins. And we know that they are separate species, but the work to describe them is still underway. So while we technically consider them a single species, we know that the long-beaked common dolphin is eventually going to be called Eastern North Pacific common dolphin, which is kind of a weird name, and the scientific name is going to be Delphinus bairdii, but right now they're subspecies. However, this is you guys as birders are very interested in figuring out how to identify them, how to tell subspecies apart. So I'm going to give it a stab. There are really no resources that adequately address this dilemma. I have found no field guide that clearly shows the differences in a way that's easy to understand. Even the illustrations that I'm using that are by Peter Folkens, who is the most brilliant marine mammal illustrator, I don't think that they capture the subtlety. And so I'm going to use these two photos. That's a short-beaked common dolphin on the top and a long-beaked common dolphin on the bottom. So they both have this hourglass pattern on the side. They have a dark cape. You can tell in this photo, even though the angle is not precisely the same, and how should I say that, the magnification is not exactly the same. You can tell that the short-beaked common dolphin has a relatively shorter and stubbier bill. Of course, that is not a difference that you can pick up in the field if you're seeing only one of the two species. But one thing that you can learn to identify is the angle of the forehead. The short-beaked common dolphin has a much more rounded forehead, so the angle between the beak and the forehead is much more, it's much closer to a right angle, whereas the long-beaked common dolphin has a more has a flatter forehead, a more gently sloping, and a much more open angle where the beak meets the forehead. That is really the best way to tell them apart if you are looking at a photo or if you get a really good look at them. As for jizz, you see that the eye of the short-beaked common dolphin on the top is more surrounded by pale area. And while there is tremendous individual variation, and often the dark cape will reach much closer to the eye than in this photo, the eye is much more noticeable in the short-beaked common dolphin pretty much at all times. If you see a dolphin that looks like it has a pale face with a dark eye standing out in the middle of it, you are looking at a short-beaked common dolphin. To me, they kind of have a kind of a blank expression, kind of a startled expression, like their eyes are bulging or something. Whereas in the long-beaked common dolphin on the bottom, the eye always blends in more with the dark cape and the dark beak. And again, this is something that that takes a lot of practice, and because there's so much variation, you have to look at different individuals to start creating an ID for a group. They generally do not have mixed groups. Pods of short-beaked and long-beaked common dolphins might be traveling together, but they tend to kind of be separated. Like on one side are the long-beaks, on the other side are the short-beaks. So they're often, most of the time, they're not intermixed. Here again, you have the short beak on top, long beak on the bottom. You see the eye on the short beak common dolphin stands out a little bit more than in the long beak common dolphin. You see the short beak common dolphin on the top also has a pale area in the dorsal fin. This area can be of different shapes and sizes, and long-beaked common dolphins can have that too. Not all animals have them, not all pods have any animals with pale dorsal fins, but if you see pale dorsal fins, they're much more common in short-beaked common dolphins than in long-beaked common dolphins. Here's a short-beaked common dolphin flying high. Short-beaked common dolphins tend to be more acrobatic. Often you see a pod at a distance, and if you see a lot of leaps, many of them really high leaps, that is an indication that you're probably looking at short-beaked common dolphins. Also, short-beaked common dolphin, this is a long-beaked common dolphin. And dolphins in general, but common dolphins in particular, are other than humans and primates, they're one of the mammals that use sex not just for reproduction but for social reasons. And by social reasons, I am using the biological definition, which includes things like rape and dominance, but dolphins copulate for many reasons other than reproduction. And we see it quite often that the male will turn upside down and swim under the female during the act, but it could actually be rape where a male is actually copulating with another male. All right, here's the next dolphin. Again, interestingly taxonomic. From a taxonomic standpoint, this is a Pacific white-sided dolphin. Very, very handsome animal. It has a similar hourglass pattern than the common dolphins. The color is very, very different. It's a pretty stark black and white, and it has much less of a beak. There's just kind of this hint of a beak. And again, they are considered a single species, but we know that there are two ecotypes. There are two different kinds of Pacific white-sided dolphins that we see in our area. They are a cold water species, so we're at the southern end of their range. We tend to see Pacific white-sided dolphins when the water is cold. So it's usually during the winter, and it's especially prevalent in years where the water is particularly cold. But we will also see Pacific white-sided dolphins in the summer when the water is particularly warm. And what happens is that there is a second population that is actually quite different from the northern population that lives south of us. So we are kind of in the gap between Pacific white-sided dolphins. When it's cold, we get the ones from the north. When it's warm, we get the ones from the south. And this is an interesting mutation. This is called a Brownell's dolphin. So a very, very small percentage of Pacific white-sided dolphins have these abnormal patterns, and they can really vary. They can be completely different, but it's always fun to look for a different white-sided dolphin. Here's a crazy dolphin, the northern right whale dolphin. It's named after a right whale because right whales don't have dorsal fins, and neither do these guys. They are not very common, and we are again at the southern end of their range. I have not seen one in Southern California in a long, long time. Between 20 and 30 years ago, we used to see them occasionally. I have not really seen them lately, but they're really interesting animals. Beware of porpoising sea lions, which look a lot like this, but keep an eye out for northern right whale dolphins. And finally, the bottlenose dolphin. That's kind of our quintessential dolphin. That's flipper. Many of us grew up with it. There have been new incarnations of flipper. And again, there are two ecotypes in our area. Bottlenose dolphin have a worldwide distribution, and there are clearly different species. Right now, we've split them into two species. There's a Tursiops aduncus in around Australia, but there will certainly be more at some time. We have two ecotypes in our area. We have the coastal ones, which live near shore. Those are the ones you see from the beach. They are right there outside the breakers. They are sharing the waves with the surfers, and these never range more than about 1 kilometer from shore. And then there's an offshore type. They're slightly darker, slightly larger, and those we normally do not see close to shore, although we do see them around the islands. So this is a coastal, a paler, smaller bottlenose dolphin. These are the larger, darker offshore common dolphins. The offshore bottlenose dolphins, sorry, are much more active. They will leap a lot more often and higher, and they occur in much larger groups. Coastal bottlenose dolphin occur in groups of between 6 and maybe 20 at the most, whereas the offshore ones can easily reach group sizes of 80 to 100. And here's a crazy dolphin, the rhesus dolphin. These guys don't have a beak. They have this blunt face, and they are their pigmentation is very, very interesting. So you see the two younger animals on top, their base color, the color of their skin is this dark gray, but there are a lot of social interactions. They do rake each other with their teeth, and the scars that remain don't go away. They just build scar upon scar upon scar, as you see in the two animals on the bottom, and they become paler and paler as they become more and more scarred until they become almost white. This is an animal, so they are white below, but the dark area above really becomes darker. So here you see a newborn, almost black. They will get a little bit paler, but they will turn white once they get raked by their conspecifics. And these are sometimes mistaken for beluga whales. You see a white, large dolphin. These guys are 12 to 14 feet long, so people will say beluga whale, which is what I thought a few months ago when I heard that there was a beluga whale seen off San Francisco. I said, well, somebody doesn't know they're rhesus dolphins. And although if I had given this presentation a year ago, I would have said no danger of seeing a beluga whale in Southern California. This beluga whale was off San Diego a few months ago. There is no indication that it has escaped. The Navy used to have a beluga whale in San Diego, but they haven't had it in many years. And SeaWorld has beluga whales, but there's no way that they can make their way to the ocean, and we would know if there was one missing. So there was a beluga whale off San Diego, and it washed up dead in Baja a few weeks later. So maybe this was an animal that wasn't well and just kept coming down the coast. Pilot whales. If you've been going out to sea in Southern California, if you've been to Catalina Island 40 years ago, you would have said, oh, the pilot whales are very, very common in Southern California. There was a resident pod here in the St. Peter Channel that was always seen by whale watching boats, but basically they're not here anymore, and it is believed that they were caught to extinction. There are still short-finned pilot whales in the area, but it's definitely not a whale that we see every day. They're fairly easy to recognize. They have a dorsal fin that's set very far forward on their body, further forward than most other species of cetaceans. The dorsal fin can be very wide. It's wider in males than in females, and as older as the males get, the wider their fin gets. So they can have very wide dorsal fins. They spend a lot of time at the surface. If you see a pod of pilot whales, you will see them at the surface quite often. So that's another indication of what you're looking at. Very bulbous head, very wide dorsal fin. And a close relative of theirs is the false killer whale, which looks very different. These guys are very streamlined, very long. They actually look like black torpedoes underwater. Again, they're a tropical species, but they do show up in the Southern California Bight on occasion. So here you see what they look like. They're really, really long skinny black whales. Here's one breaching, and that is the port of Los Angeles in the background. So these guys can be seen in the area. And that takes us to the most iconic of all the cetaceans, the killer whales. They can be seen in our area quite often, although they are more common in temperate and subpolar waters. They are considered a single species at the moment. They are the most cosmopolitan of all mammals. They're the most widely distributed mammal species in the world, or the second most. The most is Homo sapiens. And again, there are many ecotypes, basically because scientists are still working out the nuances of splitting them into subspecies or separate species. We have 3 of the ecotypes here in Southern California. They are the top 3 on the right-hand side. We have the residents, which we know from Puget Sound, the salmon eaters. We have the big killer whales, which are the ones that we're used to be called transients. They're the mammal eaters. They range up and down the west coast of North America, and they're certainly the ones that we see here the most often. And then there are the offshores, which are shark eaters. These are animals that are seen most often further from shore, but they live generally north of here, but they do come into the Southern California Bight on occasion. And I do need to move a little bit quicker here. I'm noticed that I'm running short on time. So this is a pale calf. You see it's kind of got a pale hue to it. It's not as dark as its mother. This is one of the animals that we see regularly in Southern California. And this is Ryan Lawler, who runs Newport Coastal Adventures, and he had some killer whales just basically riding the wake of his rib about a year ago, and so he was taking these crazy selfies with the killer whales. Killer whales are always fun to watch. They are probably the darlings of the whale watchers. And really, if you want to see killer whales, I would recommend that you go to Monterey Bay from the 2nd week of April to about the 3rd week of May. That's the time when the big killer whales are there ambushing the migrating gray whales. And you will have an excellent chance of not just seeing killer whales, but seeing some amazing interactions. But if you go out often enough in Southern California, you will also see them. So that brings us to the baleen whales, the filter feeders. If the killer whale is the darling, the favorite of whale watchers, the humpback whale has got to be a close second. These guys are just incredibly interactive, incredibly charismatic, and incredibly fun. So this slide still says endangered. They were actually taken off the, most populations were taken off the endangered species list in the US, but there are about 40 different populations worldwide, and the US still considers 3 of them endangered. So they're technically on the endangered species list, but most whales that we see here are not. Here you see the baleen that we talked about, those plates that grow from the upper jaw and are used to filter food from the water. Great breachers, they breach probably most often of any species, followed by gray whales and sperm whales. They're part of a group of whales called the rorquals, which have highly expandable mouth cavities. Their bellies, basically from their chin down to their belly button, are pleated, and they can fill the mouth cavity with water to an extent that's absolutely astounding. Humpback whales have the longest pectoral flippers of any species. They're about a third of their body length. And I'm going to move on to the largest of all not just the whales, but the largest creature to ever live on planet Earth, the blue whale. It really takes an aerial view to take in the size and the might of these animals. And again, they're rorqual whales. They have those pleated throats and bellies that allow them to extend the size of their mouth cavity. And there's a mathematical formula to figure out how much volume a rorqual whale can fit in its mouth, and it depends on the size. So somewhere around 65 feet, a whale that's somewhere around 65 feet long will be able to take in the same water mass to its own body mass. So theoretically, a 65-foot long whale could put a whale of the same size in its mouth. And once they get bigger than about 65 feet, they can fit in more than their own body size. So a blue whale could fit a whale of its own size plus some more water into its mouth. Again, we can see these guys very, very close. That's the old Gerald Desmond Bridge in Long Beach. Now there's a new bridge. And here's a blue whale with one of these smaller animals out there, a red-necked phalarope. And we often hear that the heart of a blue whale is the size of a small car. This is a model in the Te Papa Museum in New Zealand. And this is my wife, Diane, demonstrating that actually somebody could move through an aorta of a blue whale. Fin whale, the second largest whale, the second largest creature to ever live on this planet. Although we know that blue whales in the northern hemisphere are not as large as the ones in the southern hemisphere. The largest whale ever reliably measured, the largest blue whale, was in the southern hemisphere, and it was just over 110 feet long. In the northern hemisphere, they are more in the 80 to 90 foot range, and that's the size of the fin whale. And just anecdotally, from my impression of seeing hundreds of blue whales and hundreds of fin whales off the west coast here, I think that our fin whales might be just ever so slightly larger than our blue whales. I more often see a fin whale where I think, oh my God, this is big, than a blue whale. This is the large dorsal fin that gives them their name. Blue whales have very, very small stubby dorsal fins. And here you can make out the white lower jaw. A fin whale is the only asymmetrically colored animal in the world. The lower jaw is white on the right-hand side and dark on the on the left-hand side. We're not exactly sure why that is. They might use it to either scare prey or sneak up on prey, depending on which side they show. And like many whales, they are susceptible to ship strike. I'm going to keep moving. So the sei whale is fairly rare in our area. It is a large rorqual that's very, very difficult to tell apart from a fin whale. You really, the main clue is that when a sei whale surfaces, you see the blowhole and the dorsal fin at the same time. It kind of comes up to the surface vertically. It's very difficult to tell apart. Brutus whale is another whale that's very similar to the previous two, very difficult to tell apart. It has a more erect dorsal fin. The dorsal fin is slightly larger, and it's a tropical whale that is not really seen very often here, and it is kind of difficult to tell apart. And finally, the minke whale. Minke whale is a fairly common whale here. They tend to be more cryptic. Most of the time, they're difficult to see. They surface very quickly. They don't have a visible blow. So if you see a whale come up, you see the head above the blowhole above the water, and you don't really see a blow that is an indication that you're likely looking at a minke whale. They're fairly small, in the 20 to 30 foot range, but they can be very, very active, very curious. They will approach boats. They will perform spectacular breaches, and they might stay around for a long time. The gray whale is the poster child of whale watching. It is really the species that has started organized commercial whale watching in kind of the 1950s, right here in Southern California, where sport fishing boats sat idle in the winter. There wasn't much sport fishing going on, and these whales were traveling by close to shore. So enterprising captains started charging people about to go out and look at gray whales, a practice that has really traveled all over and that has reached all corners of the globe. Interestingly, gray whale, they are not listed in the US at the moment, although they really represent all the facets of conservation of a large whale species. There was a population in the Atlantic that was the first large whale population to be hunted to extinction by humans. And that happened in the early 1700s. So that population is the first whale that humans have hunted to extinction. Our local population, the one that winters in Baja California and feeds up in the Arctic, was the first large whale to be taken off the Endangered Species Act list in 1994. But there's also a Western North Pacific gray whale, a population that spends its summers feeding off Russia, and that population numbers, you see the estimate here, 130 animals. So they're critically endangered. So the gray whale is at the same time extinct, critically endangered, and recovered, taken off the endangered species list. So here's an example. This is down in Baja, of course, but this is the poster child for whale watching, and they're a very coastal whale. This is in Laguna Niguel down in Orange County. This is a calf migrating back to the Arctic feeding grounds. So this is a whale that's very easily seen from shore. Here's a mother and a calf on the northbound migration, kind of following a Brandt's cormorant. And okay, that brings us to a species that we are very unlikely to see, the North Pacific right whale. Right whales are called the right whale because they were the right species to hunt. They occur close to shore. They're slow moving. They will float when dead. They yield a huge amount of blubber and oil. They have very long, valuable baleen. So they were the first whales targeted by whalers. They are basically the species that started commercial whaling. They are the population is recovering in the Southern Ocean. They are divided into 3 species now. So the southern right whale is on its way to recovery. The population is way smaller than it has been, but it is increasing. The North Atlantic right whale is in dire straits. The population is now under the number that I have here. It's roughly 360. We know each individual whale, and these guys are highly susceptible to ship strike and to entanglement in fishing gear. So their population is not increasing at the time. In the North Pacific, there are 2 separate populations. One, which is the Eastern North Pacific population, the one that would reach California. The original range is from Baja California into the Bering Sea, but that population is down to about 30 animals. They were hunted up until very recently, really maybe the early 80s. They were hunted illegally by the Soviet Union that had renegade whale catchers that would actually spend a lot of time in US waters in the Bering Sea and in the Gulf of Alaska. And there have been fewer than 20 sightings of these guys off California since 1900, but they are sighted occasionally. About 3 years ago, there was a news helicopter that was showing this whale off the La Jolla Pier, and saying, look, here's a migrating gray whale. And I looked at it and I said, that is not a migrating gray whale. So there was a right whale off La Jolla recently. So they can be seen. Look for a very large, very dark whale with no dorsal fin and a distinctly V-shaped blow. A lot of people propose that you can tell whale species apart by their blows. It is not really a diagnostic. You can have a rough idea of what species it might be, but there's a lot of variation, a lot of overlap. But right whales do have a very distinctive blow. If you see it from the correct angle, from either straight ahead or straight behind, it is distinctly V-shaped. That's a clue that you're looking at a right whale. They also have these callosities on their rostrum, on their head, that bear some resemblance to the bumps that humpback whales have. So here's you see the difference: a humpback whale on top and a right whale on the right. And the sperm whale kind of escaped its group. It for some reason, I have it here at the end of the baleen whales and not with the toothed whales. This is the largest toothed whale. They are very deep divers. They often stay down for close to an hour, and then they spend a lot of time at the surface reoxygenating. As you can see, this is right here in Southern California. Those are the oil rigs of Orange County. And I'm very quickly going to talk about the beaked whales. There are quite a few species. This is a Baird's-beaked whale. That's one of the two species that we're most likely to see here, the Baird's-beaked whale and the Cuvier's beaked whale. Here's a Cuvier's beaked whale, but I need to say a couple of things really quickly. So beaked whales are deep water species. We tend to find them on pelagic birding trips more than on whale watching trips, because pelagic whale watching trips tend to go further offshore, but they are very, very cryptic. We know hardly anything about these guys. A brand new species was just discovered a couple of years ago, right here off Baja California. It was biopsied. It is a new species. We didn't know that it existed. There's another species that also must occur somewhere in this area. It is known only from 6 stranded individuals. It has never been seen alive, or never been knowingly seen alive by anybody. And there's one species around Hawaii that we only have recordings of. We have not been able to match those recordings to any existing species of beaked whale. So these guys are really super mysterious. We know very little about it. It's very exciting to see them and any data that we can collect. They are being studied right here in Southern California on the Navy test range, kind of between San Diego and San Clemente Island in that area. And we have learned that Cuvier's beaked whales are by far the deepest and longest divers of all mammals. We by deploying data tags on them, we know that they can dive to over 1.5 miles deep and stay down for almost 3 hours. And with that, I'm quickly going to touch on the pygmy sperm whale and the dwarf sperm whale. These are two, again, very, very cryptic species. They do occur in our area, but even if we saw one, we wouldn't really know what we're looking at, because basically all we would see is just a dorsal fin breaking the surface. They do wash up dead on occasion, and they do they can release ink like a squid, so that this one is for Ron. And with that, boy, I went way over here, but there's just so much to talk about. So this is
that was
social
wonderful.
media.
That was,
And
yes, fantastic. That was
Whew.
a whale of a talk.
I'm sorry that I tried to be as brief as I could.
No, that's fine. No, you have our seal of approval.
Yes, no, that was a wonderful, wonderful presentation. For anyone that has a question, please, for Bernardo, please pop it in the Q&A. That'll help us kind of keep track of any questions that might come up. And Bernardo, that was incredible. Halfway through it, I had to run and get my guide to marine mammals. So kind of try and keep track along with what you were saying and all that. Do you have any recommendations for I noticed this one's over 20 years old. Any recommendations for guides?
Yes, so I kind of neglected to put in a slide with the field guides, which I kind of meant to do. That one it's kind of referred to as the Falcons guide, but it's the Audubon Society guide.
Right.
That is still, I would say that is still the classic. It has the best illustrations, and the text is really, really good. There are field guides that have more information, that are a little bit heavier. But if you want a book to take with you and look things up as you're out there, I don't think you can do better than that one.
Okay, great.
Wonderful. We have a few questions that got put in the chat. So one of them by, excuse me, by Lance. Given how deep the elephant seals dive, where it's dark, how do they locate their food?
Okay, yes. So we perceive our environment through vision. All our other senses are important, but we orient ourselves, we find food, we avoid predators by seeing. Whales by hearing. They spend a lot of time in the dark. They can hear everything in their environment. They can even the toothed whales can even echolocate, which involves hearing. Seals do it by sense of touch. Their whiskers are so sensitive that they can pick up vibrations that we can't even fathom exist. So they will orient themselves and find food by basically feeling the vibration. There was a study done a few years ago where a harbor seal was trained and then blindfolded. They put suction cups over its eyes. They ran a mechanical fish through a pool, and then they asked the harbor seal to follow the path of the fish. And they found that the harbor seal was still able to find the exact path that the fish had taken 35 seconds after the fish went by. So the fish went by, they waited 35 seconds, then the harbor seal, they were still could still pick up the residual vibrations in the water.
Wow.
Incredible. Incredible.
That is pretty cool.
Yeah, that is.
And I think we have another question. This is the local pod of pilot whales. Can you say again, why did the local pod of pilot whales that I guess used to be here, why did they go extinct or almost extinct?
Well, so they stopped being seen right around the El Nino of, what was that, 82? There was sometime in the early 80s, we had a very strong El Nino with very strong storms, and they stopped being seen after that. And kind of the general wisdom was that they had left. It was also, we didn't used to see rhesus dolphins before that event, and definitely rhesus dolphins came in the area with that obvious change in water temperature. So rhesus dolphins are very aggressive towards other marine mammals. They might have chased off the remaining pilot whales, but we also know that that pod was being bycaught in local fisheries. The gill nets did not become outlawed in California till around that time, and there were longline fisheries. We know that quite a few of those pilot whales died in fisheries. So it is kind of a combination of factors, but there used to be a pod of pilot whales here that was kind of a gimmick. The whale watch boats could rely on finding something fairly reliably, and anybody who took a ferry to Catalina would see pilot whales, and they're not around anymore.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a question in the Q&A from Yvonne. Oh, this is interesting. Why don't the deep and long divers get the bends?
Well, that's again, I mean, many of these questions would kind of merit their own lecture.
Yeah.
And so first of all, whales do get the bends. not as easily and not as intensely as humans, but they do get the bends. We do find tissue damage. We find bone damage in dead animals that have been caused by the bends. So they do have to control their ascent. And we know animals can die. For example, if they're startled by military sonar, they might come up too quickly and literally die from bleeding ears. I mean, that happens. But what I think the question is like, what is their adaptation to avoid the bend? It's basically they carry oxygen in their blood and in their muscle rather than carrying air in their lungs. So hemoglobin and myoglobin allows them to store a lot of oxygen in their blood and in their tissue. If you look at whale meat, it's practically, or whale blood, it's practically black. So it is that is the big difference that allows them to avoid the bends to a great extent.
Great.
Very interesting.
Yes.
Let's
Mark,
see.
I
Any
think
more
we're running out of questions.
We are.
Can I ask another one? This is Lance.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So a question similar to my question about the elephant seals, but regarding sperm whales. So you mentioned they dive down to roughly a mile. Are they echolocating to find food, or are they just using passive listening, or what's going on?
So I'm sure that they can, that they will listen, that they will find a squid initially by passive listening, but we know that they definitely zero in on prey with echolocation. So I mean that is something that we can see, quote unquote, very, very easily by having a hydrophone in the water. And we think that a sperm whale actually locates so loudly that it can stun its prey with that focused vocalization.
Wow, that's incredible.
Thank you.
Well, I am going to agree with Naresh and say this was a wonderfully informative presentation. Thank you very much, Bernardo,
Yes, thank you so
for
much.
presenting this for us. It was absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, thank you.
Well,
That was really, really excellent.
Mhm.
Thank you for having me. I
I
had a lot of fun.
And you
Go
need
ahead,
to
Frank.
come with us on the next pelagic, Bernardo.
Yes.
I know. I keep looking at the calendar, like, I know I was out of town for the last one.
That's okay. The next one, absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you
Yep,
very,
thank
very
you.
much.
was my pleasure.
Join us next month with LA Birders. Well, on November 8th, we're going to the polls, but the following week, we'll have Lance here to talk about Red Cross bills, and we're looking forward to that. And until then, I hope everyone gets their wood warblers, and I will see everyone out in the field. Take care,
All right.
everyone.
Night.
Good night.
Good
Bye,
night.
Take
everyone.
care.
Good night.
Thanks again, Bernardo.
Thanks, Bernardo.
Thank you, Bernardo.
My pleasure.